Hey, what's up everyone? Today I'm going to teach you how I paint Magma Armor for my Slaves to Darkness. So I start with a Rust-Oleum white primer. Any white primer through a spray can will do. And then I base coat with Dollar Roundy Brilliant Yellow. This is a very bright yellow, as you can see. And as I start to apply this Dollar Roundy Indian Yellow ink, there is a method that I'm going to repeat throughout the video. The way I think about it is like this. The centerpiece of the armor should be the hottest point. So for every armor panel, you want to maintain that bright yellow. And then as you move out from that center of the panel, you apply these additional colors. In this case, it would be this Indian Yellow, which is kind of an orange. Next, we're going to apply Liquitex Bright Orange. And again, you're moving away from the center of the armor panels. You can also apply it in the shadows. That's a good way to think about it, and the areas that are less obvious. But with each progressive layer, as we move from yellow through orange to red and eventually black, you want to leave a little bit of the previous layer showing. So here you go. Here's after the orange and the Indian Yellow. As you can see, as you move away from the center of the panels, we get more of that red and orange going on. Next, we're going to apply Liquitex Scarlet. This is actually a very orangey red. It doesn't quite look like it as I'm applying it, but if you compare this to like a standard crimson red, it's quite orange. Also, hey, just a quick reminder that if you enjoy this type of tutorial, this type of content, we'd appreciate like, subscribe, tell your friends, all that usual stuff. Thanks, appreciate it. Next, we're going to move on to Vallejo Gory Red. This is a pretty crimson red, and we're going to just dry brush all the armor panels. You can be pretty heavy with it, but you want to make sure you hit every armor panel, especially all this trim, because we're not going to end up painting this trim a different color. Yeah, so apply this over the entire area. Here's a good example of what it looks like and how important it is, because it ends up defining all these panels. As you move from your yellows down into your reds, each color is essentially a cooled off part, right? If something's yellow, it's burning hot, and as it cools down, it becomes red, then eventually black once it's completely, I guess, crisp. I don't know the exact metallurgy process for it. So, yellow hot, red still hot, black not as hot. Now we're going to grab Vallejo Hull Red, and we're going to do the same thing essentially, as we're going to dry brush all the edges. You are still going to apply this pretty heavily everywhere, but I want to especially emphasize the areas that we'd previously painted red, i.e. the colder areas. You really want to build up this carbon look, and this whole red's going to help you achieve that. We are actually going to move up to a gray, but this is a nice midpoint. You can also use grays. I've seen grays used for similar schemes, but I like this whole red because it's still very warm. And in contrast to the yellow, it still looks quite warm. Here's a pretty clear piece. You can see how much darker this dry brush is, especially on that eye right on the front. Yeah, so make sure you're just applying this pretty heavily. Yeah, so once you're done with that, this is where you'll be at. This is actually an area you could probably stop at. I would maybe go one more layer of dry brushing with the petroleum gray, which is what we're going to do next. But honestly, you're getting to the point where you could probably call it good enough. I am going to end up doing a bit more, but this would be a good stopping point if you just want to achieve this look. So next I do the petroleum gray, and this is especially emphasized on the quote-unquote cold areas. Again, cold areas meaning the less yellow, more red areas. The areas that are furthest away from the center of the panel lines. Armor panels. This is a surprisingly easy and straightforward paint scheme. I'm actually kind of curious if I can use this same method to do some other paint jobs. I think it might work pretty well with some like neon greens and yellows, but anyway. Yeah, I think this would actually work pretty well with a frost effect. I think that might be worth pursuing. We'll see. So here's a good example of how important this gray is. It really helps sell that charred look. Without it, it just looks kind of hot, but it doesn't quite sell the effect. And this is actually something I'm going to come back even heavier to later in the tutorial, because I wasn't super satisfied with where it ended up. But here, again, this would be a perfectly fine stopping point. Next up, we're going to do a little bit to enhance that hot molten effect. I suggest you go back and forth and play with the colors on this, with the yellows and oranges until you're happy with it. I had to end up going back and forth quite a bit. So still with that petroleum gray, I'm going back and hitting some of the edges that I wasn't able to get as much, I wasn't able to define as much as I'd liked with the dry brush. So especially right here, right in this big back panel, I was afraid of dry brushing over that yellow. So I'm going in with a brush and just refining those lines around that panel. You don't have to do this for everything. There are just a few areas I was nervous dry brushing. And even then, you know, if you dry brush it, it's fine. This is just a personal preference. I like to keep it a little bit cleaner on those, around those yellows. And also right here, the dry brush just wasn't picking up this edge for as much as I tried, so went back and defined it with a brush. Next up, we're gonna add AK Interactive gloss. Any gloss will do, but the reason we're doing this is we're going to be applying some white, in this case Adplunk 502 Snow White, to the panel lines. And this is gonna help us sell a glowing effect. So yeah, just grab your white oil paint. You could also do this with an acrylic, but what you're going to do is you're going to panel line all the panels. I mean, it's a chaos model. There's tons of panels, so you're gonna the faster you can do this, the better. That's why I like the oil paint, because the oil does half the work for you. But again, if you want to use an acrylic, you can do that as well. Acrylic ink, I would suggest, would work probably pretty well, though probably not as well as this oil. All right, and this is what you should have after that. Obviously, this is not where we're stopping, but this is where we're at. What we're gonna end up doing is we're gonna grab our airbrush, but you don't have to do this part with an airbrush. I end up actually using the hairy brush in some areas I couldn't reach with the airbrush, but you're going to go back over that white with that Dollar Rowney Brilliant Yellow, which is a slightly transparent yellow. And because you've panel lined those areas white, it's gonna look like they're glowing. I mean, that's the whole point of the effect. What this ends up doing is that it ended up taking away some of the redness from some of the areas I had previously done, which I hadn't noticed. So if I were to redo this tutorial, I would tell you to go back and recheck your work, reapply those reds as necessary. And there we go. I mean, it looks pretty good here, even still. But next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a matte varnish. And what matte varnish does is it will get rid of the shine. Getting rid of that shine will kind of kill the saturation and vibrancy of these reds and yellows. And also unifies the reds and yellows, so they don't look, the contrast is lost, is what I'm trying to say. So, because of that, I still wanted a matte varnish as opposed to a gloss one, so I feel like this step is still necessary. I go back with Dollar Rowney Flame Red. This is a much more red than the Scarlet, which I had mentioned before. This is more of a crimson color, less orange, more red. And I'm reapplying that red in those, I guess I would say the extremities of the armor, the edges of the armor, the areas around that are not around the center of the armor. I really need to come up with a better term for it, but the areas you see me painting now, if that's easier. And applying this red, and I felt like this really helped sell the effect. I was happy with where it was before, but the red really kind of is one of those. I didn't think it was necessary, but I'm super happy I ended up doing that. Ended up going back and adjusting. And there you go. There's the difference. Probably not. It doesn't look like much of a difference, I guess. But if you look at how orange the one on the left is versus the red the one on the right is, I much prefer the red look. But we're still not finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab Liquitex Carbon Black, and this is like a slightly transparent black. And we're going to apply this to the, again, you've heard me say it, I'm sure 20 times by now, the edges, the areas that would be cold. Think of the areas that you would just apply the red to. Now to the tips of those, apply black. Don't apply this black in the areas that are yellow, because that'll just look wrong. And there we go. I apply this charred look using the Liquitex Carbon Black to pretty much every panel, and it just looks so much better. I also apply it to the back of the weapon, to the back of his axe, which is a slightly modified axe. I'm not in love with the standard Varanguard weapon, so I actually cut one down and shaped it to my to my liking. You can also apply the black to shadows because, well, they're shadows, and they'll still sell as shadows. And there we go, much better with that addition of the red and black. You still have that bright yellow from that ink, from that oil wash we applied earlier. And yeah, I'm just much more happy with how this ended up coming out. Of course, you might notice that the rest of the model is also painted up. So I'm not going to include that in this tutorial. I've done this paint scheme on a bunch of other stuff, but that should leave you with this. Alright, here he is in all his glowing glory. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. This is probably my favorite model for my Slaves to Darkness army as of yet. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. And if you did, please let us know. Let us know if you have any questions as well. We do have a bunch of other tutorials on our channel, as well as a bunch of live streams. So if you want to check those out, please do. And I'll see you next time. Bye.